Blee has a lot of story arcs. Also, you know, now she has a different mantle. She's plays a really main key role in the current X line. So I think that's chef's kiss casting.
And then Jacob Elordi is Colossus.
That's evil.
Evil. Wait, time out. No, we can't do that. What to expect, perhaps, from the MCU at their upcoming panel. Marvel's last Comic-Con panel was 2019. They've been doing their D23 stuff. First panel is on Friday, the 22nd. So by the time you're hearing this, it's probably happened. And that's the panel that's going to cover animation with Brad Winderbaum, who has kind of worked his way up through Marvel from working on the movies to now EPing on almost everything they do, certainly on the TV side. We expect looks at X-Men 97. Very exciting.
That's definitely going to be the big thing for that panel. And I think, like, we might get a little hint at how much X-Men 97 is going to be canon and important to the mutants in the MCU, because I think that seems to be where they're going with it.
I completely agree. I've been thinking about this, actually, since the last time we all got together and spoke in a meeting. It really feels like X-Men 97 is there to number one, kind of establish the X-Men as a team in people's minds. They certainly have not appeared in the MCU as of yet, and it's been a number of years since the last X movie, which maybe we should, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. Well, I liked some of it. It wasn't great.
The truth is, yeah, X-Men movies, that's a complex thing. And I'm very excited to see, I've seen every X-Men movie many, many times.
Yes.
But I'm excited to see a new iteration, because I think in hindsight, a lot of the problems that the later X-Men movies have, there is a direct lineage to the whole way that property was treated. So I think it's going to be really exciting. I think something that's really cool about this X-Men 97 thing, this is a great example of listening to what has kept your fandom alive.
Yeah.
Fans of this cartoon are like one of the most intense, beloved fandoms. This cartoon shaped so many lives, so many people's love of the X-Men, introduced so many people to Marvel Comics. And I really love that this is one of the ways that Disney is deciding and Marvel is deciding to bring back the X-Men into the fold after the Fox ownership.
We should also expect to see on this from this Friday panel some Marvel Zombies stuff, maybe peeks into What If Season 2 and more. And then, of course, on Saturday, that's the big one. We'll talk about it next. That's the big stuff. We will recap all of this stuff on our next episode, but almost guaranteed we're going to get first looks at Wakanda Forever, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, maybe the holiday special, perhaps Blade. Maybe we'll see Mahershala in the full Blade costume.
Yeah, I would love that with the long jacket.
Now, here's where we get a little bit, theorize-y. Are we going to have any announcements about the Fantastic Four? Are we going to have any announcements about the mutants? Let's see. Speaking of the mutants, this Wednesday, Deadline listed The Mutants as the title of the potential upcoming X-Men movie and listed it as among the things that we are likely to see in Hall H. Quote, there's still some stuff we haven't seen, specifically the Fantastic Four reboot, Mahershala Ali in Blade, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Marvels, and The Mutants. What is your initial reaction to The Mutants?
So, I think this is very interesting. I think it would be very bold if they made their first X-Men movie not with the word the X-Men in it, with the words. I think the mutants, like Eric at Nerdist, who's just so brilliant, we were talking about it earlier, and he made a really good point where he was like, this sounds like it could be a TV show that establishes the world of the mutants before we see them form the X-Men. Now, I would love a movie called The Mutants where it's pre the X-Men forming. I think that would be really brave. And then the X-Men movie is, the third, fourth MCU style Avengers type movie. I don't know. The X-Men brand is like so powerful. I think it would be really bold though, and I would like it. There's so many things it could mean. Like, is it a Morlocks movie? Like,
right.
Is it a New
Hellfire
Mutants
Club,
movie, but a real
like,
New Mutants movie? Is it a Hellfire Club movie? Is it a, my dream has long been like a, which will surprise nobody listening to this, but a Charles Xavier School for Gifted Youngers focused on the kids while the adults are out fighting, or the older students, and kind of focusing on them and how they train and how they, who they ship and all that kind of like fun teenage drama, but with the background of the X-Men. I would love to see something like that. I also think, the mutants, like we said, we're introducing all these different things, the Eternals, the Clandestine, Talo, more about Carmitage. Maybe the mutants is going to introduce us to that secret world that we've been talking about, where it's like, this is the mutants because this is the world that they've been living in. I think that could be very interesting. What do you think?
My initial reaction was, I wonder if this is true. I wonder if Marvel is going for a kind of Avengers style structure in which we have various movies that introduce these characters. So the mutants would introduce, I'm just making stuff up now, but Scott Summers and Jean as kids, maybe after they've just joined this secretive upstate New York academy for young hidden mutants, or maybe right
Sounds
before,
amazing.
or something like that. And then we build towards an X-Men team-up movie, where the X-Men movies are the team-up movies, and then the mutants and the other movies like that are the kind of standalone.
I think that sounds perfect.
Wolverine, Charles Xavier, Magneto, Storm movies, where they have their own like kind of like cast of characters with their own solo movies, and then everybody teams up in the X-Men. I wonder if this is a hint that they could be going that way.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because if we look at the X-Men comics that we love, especially like that Chris Claremont run that we're always talking about, it's all about that long lead, slow burn storytelling, which was very much that original Phase 1 MCU stuff. So, the chance to meet these characters in their own different worlds and spaces and see them come together slowly over time in a way that feels earned, and learn about who gets picked for the team, things like, I'd love to see that fight between Scott and Storm about who becomes head teacher. Like, there's so many good things you could do if you take your time with it, and it's not just like, here's the original 5 and they have powers and the government doesn't like them. I think Kevin is ambitious enough and has enough money and creative control that I would really like to see them do something like that, where they understand that this is the next 20 years of the MCU.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way that we got here, is this really unique kind of release format, which no one had ever tried before, where you have these solo movies for characters that at the time people were like, does anybody give a shit about Thor?
Yeah, most people did not know who Iron Man was. They don't want to, even Captain America, that was an outdated character no one really cared about. Like, that's true. I'm sorry.
And you're building towards this moment where all these characters, now you've established them in their own movies, with their own adventures, and their own cast of characters, which I think is actually kind of important, having that, think about Dr. Eric Selvig and all the things that he's done, and how important he's been to like the kind of like wider Happy, Darcy,
Potts.
Darcy, Pepper Potts,
oh my God.
like all these characters who came in through the solo movies, who were then like really important in kind of like populating the MCU and making it feel like a real live universe with all these people walking around.
That's so true.
I wonder if the mutants is a hint that they're going to do that, because this is how they got there. This is how they got here. And I think it makes more sense than just doing, because for me, I think I love the X-Men movies, particularly X2, X-United.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they're great.
Even if they're bad, I fucking liked them. Like, even when they're killing characters that should not die, I was like, fine.
R.I.P. Darwin.
R.I.P. Darwin. But the thing that made it hard is that you had all these X-Men movies, and you couldn't, because the cast is so huge, you barely spend any time with them.
Exactly.
You barely spend any time with Scott dies fucking off camera. Barely spend any time with Nightcrawler. Barely spend any time with Storm. I want to spend time with these characters because, selfishly, because I love them. And I think that, listen, that's how you establish the Avengers. Why not establish the X-Men that way, where you give them their own projects and then have everybody, you build towards this crescendo of a team-up movie. I think that would be cool.
I think it would be really cool. I hope that this mutants reporting is true. And I hope we get to see something like that because that would be very cool. That
said, let's do a quick fan cast. Let's cast our MCU X-Men team, and we can just pick whoever we want. It doesn't need to be giant size. It doesn't need to be Ultimate X-Men. It doesn't need to be the original team. Just people that you like. Do you want to start?
Oh, this is so hard. I think
it's really hard.
I think about all the time. Okay, I'll go with one of my favorite fan casts, which would be a very different version, but I do like the idea of it. So I'll start with Wolverine. I think there's so many different ways they could go. I'm a short King Wolverine stan, but that is not the route. That's not the route I'm going to go right now because I don't really think I have I'm still in contention. Like, would I like to see like John David Washington as Wolverine? Yes,
that's a great one.
He's very stern, but I'm going to go with Keanu Reeves. We love him. Everyone loves him, right? When he was a kid, a young actor, his dream was to play Wolverine. And I actually think in a world of Old Man Logan, of a world where we've seen a young Wolverine growing up in inverted commas because he's immortal, but we've seen Hugh Jackman on that journey. I think it would be very interesting. Wolverine's old. He can be as old as you want. He can be 300 years old. He can be 1,000 years old. He can be however old.
We have no idea how old this guy is.
It changes depending on the canon and the story and the timeline. I think it'd be really cool to see Keanu get to take on that role, have an older, grizzled Wolverine who really gets to play that father figure. That's something that we love so much about him. I think it would be really cool to have an Asian Canadian actor. Wolverine's a famously Canadian character. A lot of his story arcs have taken from specifically Japanese kind of culture and stuff. I think it could be very cool to see Keanu take that on. He's done a lot of storytelling in that world already. I think that could be so cool. But I like to cast I like to cast old and young together. That's what I did with my Fantastic Four cast at Nerdist a couple of years ago that really popped off. So I think that would be really cool.
You know what? I don't even want to argue against that. I've been convinced.
It's so
I think
cool.
that's actually a great, because now that I'm thinking about it, what would be really cool to me is like, quote unquote teenage, obviously they're, early 20s in reality, but like in the movie, like late teens, Cyclops, Iceman, Bobby, Jean, throw out the love triangle if she is that young and Logan is 300. But you know what I mean? And then this older, like grizzled mutant who's been through it is like, you kids don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Somebody go get me some beer. I think that would actually be really good. So along those lines, well, first let me do the elder states people first. Magneto, Eric Lehnsherr. Obviously one of the most important Jewish characters in comics, period. So for me, got to be a Jewish actor. It's probably, unless you're going to do something with, Hydra or alternate dimension, it wouldn't make it just.
I think it
stretches credulity for him to be a Holocaust survivor, but he could be like the grandchild of survivors. So I was thinking Liv Schreiber.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Great voiceover guy, of course. Have seen him in a Wolverine movie, and star of numerous television shows and movies.
Cotton Weary from the Scream franchise. So I'll always know him. Every time I see him, I'm just like, oh, it's Cotton Weary, wrongly imprisoned, but still sucks.
So that is my pick for Eric Lehnsherr, Magneto. Who would you like to go for?
Okay. I mean, that Magneto casting is so good. I think you're right. I think the biggest thing that they're going to come up against in this space is finding a way to recontextualize that aspect of his character to make it fitting. If I do want it to be a Jewish actor, but I do have to say, like, I've been watching The Bear, that kid, the main kid from The Bear, would be such a good young Magneto. But Marvel cast a Jewish actor, so ignore me. I don't know if he's Jewish. The character's Italian-American, so who knows. Also, my other best Jewish actor that I always cast for stuff is like Miro. I always say they should cast they should cast Miro as the Thing, right? That would be so good. Because the Thing's Jewish. I like that. I would love that. But we'll get to Fantastic Four in a minute. Whew. Okay, so let's say we'll go with the Liev Schreiber. I like that. Who would we do for Charles? Now, that is such an important chemistry. It's just
it really is
absolutely vital. I feel like in the modern MCU, and when we're very aware of the analogs that the X-Men are meant to represent, I think that a black Charles Xavier is quite likely and would make a lot of sense. So I would definitely like to see Marvel go that route. I think the rumor at the moment, one of the many rumors from absolutely unconfirmed, is Giancarlo Esposito. I think that's brilliant.
I like that. I'm intrigued by that. Let me raise this issue. Of late in current X-Men comics and, X-Men runs stretching back, say, 10 years or so. As we've talked about in previous episodes, the X-Men have become, and I think necessarily become, a more radical outfit. They, Scott in particular, broke dramatically with Charles's dream once it became clear that, listen, the humans are just never going to fucking accept us. And even our
it took him a long time, but he got there.
And even our friends, the Avengers, Captain America, etc., are seemingly never around when we're getting genocided in our millions and hundreds of thousands. And I'm just asking the question. I don't know the answer to this, and obviously we haven't even seen the X-Men yet, and we don't know what the framing is. I also think there's an interesting world in which if you take the radical X-Men perspective, you've got a kind of like almost naive white Charles.
I think that's actually a really good call. And I think that in that way, you can do something really interesting, because Charles can essentially be your bleeding heart liberal. You know, he believes in these outdated ideas that don't protect the people that he loves, even though he really is idealistic and believes that they should. And I think that could be like really interesting. I think Giancarlo works for me because I love Charles Xavier, but I'm definitely I'm a Charles Xavier critic at the same time. And I feel like he could do a really good job he could meld that kind of kind, loving heart that Charles needs. Yeah. But he can also have that coolness of someone who would send kids into like a war, like children, and would erase and suppress the memories of his closest confidants and classmates and students. What a
scooch. Even though, by the way, he said he would never do that, and he doesn't do that, and he doesn't reach into people's memories without letting. He does it all the fucking time, Charles.
He's always doing that.
He's always doing it.
Absolutely loves it. Just loves it. Loves to wipe a brain. And that will probably come up in how people don't know about the mutants. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we find out that at least one of the characters that we already know in the MCU did have some knowledge of mutants or discovered them, and they ended up having their brain wiped or being forgotten.
I am firmly, and I mean firm, like, obviously this is all conjecture, but the thing about the mutants that I feel pretty confident about is that when we do introduce Logan, he's going to be part of some super, 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 super secret part of the Super Soldier program.
For sure.
We know it didn't stop when they lost Cap in the ice, right? They just kept going and going and going. So he's going to be, he was probably maybe in Korea, maybe in Vietnam, maybe in the Middle East, just a brainwashed killing machine under the employ of shadowy government, military-industrial corporations. I think that will be something that will happen, meaning that there's got to be various scientists and people that know about his existence.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to go with Let me. How about Storm? We need Storm.
Oh.
You know, Storm has to have presence. For me, this maybe is an obvious choice, but I wanna see Lupita Nyong'o in this role.
Oh, I mean, I think that's like such a smart role. I always wondered after they cast her as Nakia in Black Panther, whether or not they were going to kind of try and retro convert them into the same character. And I did read a rumor of late about the possibility of Azari, who is Storm and T'Challa's son from Next Avengers and some
interesting.
Comics. I heard a rumor he may be in the movie. So I wonder, when Michaela Cole got announced in Black Panther 2, I was so happy to see the internet be like, Storm. Because I would just love that. It would be such an unexpected casting, and she's so well known for her comedy. But then to see her in her recent brilliant HBO show, I May Destroy You, showed that it's not just a comedic range, it's like a really big dramatic range. So I think that could be really interesting. But I think Lupita would be, that's the level that I think you need to have for a Storm casting, which is like Oscar award-winning icon. Because Storm, and I do think as well, Storm that's the character you have to get right. Right in the X-Men now, that is the character people wear on t-shirts. That was not the case. Those t-shirts weren't available when we were kids, sadly, because Storm's always been a badass. Yeah. But to me, like, if you get Storm right, you're probably on the right track. And I would love to know what the world is. One of my old dream Storm castings, and they absolutely teased me with this in Black Panther, was Angela Bassett. And Angela with the white dreads in Black Panther just looks like Storm. And I was like, how could you guys?
So you hinted at how it would work. You know, obviously, Nakia already part of a secret society in Wakanda that was hidden from the world. So it'd be like a secret society inside of a secret society. Either she's a mutant whose powers hadn't developed yet, or Charles brainwashed everybody.
I was going to say something about having her powers repressed,
Yeah.
or being in Wakanda near vibranium or the purple herb or something. It would be very easy to explain why those powers had never manifested earlier. I always wondered if that was something they were going to do. So I think that would be controversial but cool. Because also, like, Storm's comic book backstory is very of its time. It's not bad. But it's just like, I don't think anyone would be devastated to have Lupita playing Storm.
And I just want to see more of her. That's also selfishly. Who else do you have?
Okay, so I think if we're going to go young for the kind of core members like Cyclops and Jean and stuff, I am number one. We don't talk about it on the show very much, even though it is a comic book thing, but it's just so outrageous. To talk about one episode, you'd need like 5 seasons of a podcast. But I love Riverdale, and I actually think
one of the most off-the-rail television shows in the history of television shows.
If you like weird shit, if you thought Twin Peaks wasn't weird enough, then watch Riverdale. And also, if you like comic book storytelling, just skip to the last 2 seasons, because Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa, who was the creator of the show and who is an Archie writer, who made a gay Archie musical that got cease and desisted many, many years ago and then became the chief creative officer of Archie Comics, which is probably the best origin story ever. He really loves comic books and he loves Archie, and he does some absolutely just bonkers shit in the newer stuff with the way they use timelines and comic books as part of the narrative. But I think KJ Apple would be like a very good Scott Summers. He's so good as Archie, and he has this kind of stoic seriousness that I think Scott needs, but he also has a naivety that I also think Scott needs. He can kind of play that middle ground between being the jock and being the boy next door, and I think that's the version of Scott they're going to do. I prefer... The first time I thought Scott was an interesting character that I actually liked and wanted to know more about was in New X-Men, when he was having like the psychic affair with Emma. I thought version of him is very interesting. But I think, why wouldn't you try and make a young X-Men team that you can stay with for 10, 15 years? Like, that would be the smart choice. So I think going younger makes sense.
New X-Men and Astonishing X-Men were the two properties where I was just like, wow, Cyclops is really a fascinating character. Because up to that point, and I think this has kind of been a problem in the movies depiction that, the film depictions of Scott Summers is like...
Though James is amazing. James Marsden is amazing.
Yeah. It's a little bit of like, why do people follow this guy? And then it was, why does everybody fall in line behind Scott? Just because like Charles told them to? And then it wasn't until New X-Men and then Astonishing that really brought out, and I thought it in a really smart way, because he can just destroy anything he looks at. He's got to be in control all the time. And so he's always thinking about, how do I keep control of everything that's happening? How do I think about every possible thing that could possibly go wrong? When he's bouncing his optic beams off of stuff, he's just got to understand these angles and these different approaches. He is an absolute control freak. And also that kind of jock boy next door. There's like an edge to him that isn't always evident. I think sometimes it gets played as, oh, he's scared to open his eyes. If he doesn't have his visor, he doesn't know what the fuck's going on. It's actually like freeing to him to just like cut loose, but he's also like a little scared of it. And I think if whoever they find to do it, if they can crack that code, I'm really excited to see who Scott Summers can be on film. Now, for Jean, his lifelong romantic partner.
This is the big question.
Let me run something by you.
Okay, I want to hear it.
Sadie Sink.
I mean, absolutely. One, if you're a redheaded actress and you're known for being a redhead, you're going to get cast as Jean Grey. Sansa Stark.
Right, yeah.
When that casting happened, all of us were like, oh my God, of course. Of fucking course. Sadie Sink would absolutely love it. I also think...
We're going young. Again, I think it's important to go young.
I'll recast somebody younger as KJ if that was the case. But I will say, I very much like the idea of a very young Jean who is very much trying to be in control of her powers, but isn't because she's a fucking child. And who is being both looked after and manipulated. I think there's just something really cool. Also, look at the stories that are popular. Sadie Sink from Stranger Things, right? That show does not exist without the X-Men. 11 is just Jean Grey. 11 is just Jean Grey, right? But that story hit so hard, this notion of a young girl being experimented on in this horrible way, who has these unbelievable powers, and her trying to find like a found family. That's an X-Men story, and I would really love to see them. And we know Sadie has range. This is not even just Stranger Things, like the Taylor Swift video. I think everyone was like super blown away by her performance in that and the kind of emotional depth where she definitely was playing like a little bit older. And I think that's brilliant. And I think you could build a really, really interesting cast around an actual teenage Jean Grey.
You have to flesh out Jean in a way that is separate and distinct from Wanda, who has, as we have said, as you have pointed out multiple times,
it's so true.
Has to this point in the MCU basically been Jean Grey, but an adult Jean. And so I think, to your point, younger, not even not in control of her powers, doesn't know what her powers are because Charles has wiped that part of her. It's just repressed them.
Exactly.
And kind of like that very, that generous, big-hearted kind of character who is the emotional support for everyone, but is also just like super young, very naive, the kind of character who is powerful, but you would worry about going into a fight with, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Yeah, exactly. You know that she can hold her own, but also you just don't want her to have to.
Right.
Because she's a baby. Yeah. I think that's brilliant casting.
Who do you have next?
Whew. This is my favorite game. I could just... I could absolutely do this all day. I think... So another person that I think they have to get right absolutely is Rogue.
Oh, yes.
Especially because I think that you brought up a really brilliant point about Rogue and Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, and the connection that they have in the comics and this space where they exist as almost one character and Rogue's journey. And that to me seems like an arc that you would want to explore. I think about this all the time, and I'm always watching some show and I'll be like, they should cast that girl as Rogue or something. But I'm like, who would it be?
Would you also go young with Rogue, like in her first appearance?
I think if you could find the right actor, I mean, the one thing I think the MCU is really good at, especially Kevin Feige, right?
Yeah.
Replicating the things he's seen in the past in a way that is reflected but not copied. So I think that we will likely get a gruffer older Wolverine or a gruffer younger Wolverine, but I think that you're still going to have that youthful Anna Paquin is so young in that role and brings this like such a sadness to it and a naivety. Yeah. I just need to say I would never believe that Rogue would ever get a mutant cure. Thanks very much, X3. Yeah. But, we don't really talk about X3, so...
No, we don't. Again, Scott dies off screen. One of the most important X-Men of all time dies off screen in that movie.
So going to my teen superhero shows again, which I do just think is, like, really some of the best actors begin in those shows is, like, there is a... really brilliant actor in that who plays Wildcat called Yvette Monreal, and she just has this like her Wildcat's arc in Stargirl is very emotional, and she doesn't really want to be a superhero, and she doesn't want to be given she doesn't have powers, but she's given like a powered suit, which is how most of them get it, 'cause it's more of a JSA style storyline. But she has that inherent sadness, but also that feisty like righteousness. But within the story, which is something I found really interesting about Stargirl, they took her on this arc that I felt was like very roguish, where it was about when something terrible happens to someone that you care about, what's the line that you cross when it comes to dealing with the person who did that. And I think that kind of moral gray area is really important for Rogue because of the Carol Danvers storyline and that part of Danvers' backstory. So Yvette is really great, and I thought she was just so good. I mean, I want to cast like every kid from Stargirl in something. Yeah. There's a kid who plays Brainwave Jr. in the first season. Like, please, everyone go and watch that season. It's one of the best seasons of TV, and like nobody's seen it because it was on DC Universe. But the kid who plays Henry Jr. is this unbelievable kid who looks like Harry Osborn. And I mean, whoa. You just look at him and he just is Harry. He's white, but his hair almost has waves. Like he's ginger. And like, this kid's dad is such a piece of shit, Brainwave. And his arc in that show is still just one of the most heartbreaking things of all time. And I think about him all the time, and I know the MCU isn't going to do Harry Osborn, but I'm like, please cast that kid. Oh, Jake Austin Walker. He's so good. Yeah, and I'm the Stargirl team's PR person. I'm like, every child in that is amazing. Cast them in the MCU.
Quick aside, when they bring in Harry Osborn, waves? Should they do the waves in the movie?
I think that the way the MCU is now, I would trust them to do a complex character who had waves. I think they would do it. I think that you could do it in an interesting, cool way. Because like, also if we look at the way that they do the way that they react to fans now, that is the fans' vision of Harry Osborn. That's the fan art that gets drawn. That's the way people see him. Like, I would like to see it.
I'm going to do one more. Gosh, this is tough. Let's go Kitty Pryde, one of the most important Jewish characters in comics writ large. This is maybe slightly off the beaten path here, but I'm going to go Maude Apatow.
Okay. No, I could see it.
The spawn of Judd Apatow and the Apatow family. I would also, Iris maybe should also audition for it, depending how young we're going to go. But I think Maude Apatow, you know her from Euphoria in a very, very, very small role.
But like a very impactful role.
That's why I think she has it. That's why I think she can do it. Because there's like, there's like Kitty is obviously like a young kid from the suburbs, but with an edge, a fighter. She is absolutely resourceful and has depths that I think that, the experience of like watching her character evolve on screen should be that, I didn't think that this character that can just walk through walls, like that's all there is to it, right? I didn't think that she had this much ability, this much fight, this much grit to who she is. And I think Maud's character in Euphoria, her scenes in Euphoria, kind of convinced me that she could do it.
I think you're right. And also something else that I think is really key about Kitty is it's unlikely that she's going to be immediately like a main character in the movies.
Yes, I could see her being
X-Men
a very
movies,
small...
Exactly. Like, you need to build to that space where you could do a real version of Days of Future Past. Would they do it? Who knows? But, like, Kitty has a lot of story arcs. Also, you know, now she has a different mantle. She's plays a really main key role in the current X line. So I think you could build there, but I think having someone who can make the character memorable, even in the smallest scenes, is key. So I think that's chef's kiss casting.
And then Jacob Elordi is Colossus.
That's evil.
That's
evil.
Wait, time out. No, we can't do that. Okay, so your last one.
Whomst could it be? There's so many good X-Men. Oh, I love Dazzler.
I mean, we could legitimately go for, like, I'll sit here and start. I'll start casting Gold Balls and Dupe and Armor.
I'm telling you.
I will, and Doug Ramsey. I'll just keep going.
So this is an out there one, right? But I like it. Like, so the original, as we know this, like the original Dazzler was made to basically be like a tie-in character for a disco record and stuff. So I think Black Dazzler makes a lot of sense. I am the number one stan of Ella Balinska, who is this brilliant actress who was in Charlie's Angels, the much maligned reboot. It's good, actually. Don't hate. Camp stuff is fun. She's a brilliant action artist, and she's just really cool, really beautiful. And she's also in the new Resident Evil show, which is, by the way, insane. It's absolutely bonkers. Just like you couldn't believe it. You absolutely couldn't believe it.
I watched the first episode, and it is bananas. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's so good. And like, she does a lot of action and genre stuff, which is like, she's so good in Charlie's Angels the whole time. And she's English. The whole time I was watching her, I was just thinking, shit, she should be Lara Croft. Like, she's just got it. But I'd love to see her get to have a bit more fun in like a Dazzler style role, but that's still a really athletic, action-packed role because of the way her powers work. It would be really nice to see. We've seen like a glimpse of a version of a Dazzler where they're just like having a rave in a park in a movie, but I would like to see a proper Dazzler, and I think Ella could really actually, there's a scene where Ella Balinska and Kristen Stewart do a disco dance routine to Bad Girls, and it is like one of my favorite scenes from any movie, and it's like a in-time dance routine that they do as part of a Charlie's Angels star ploy. So go and watch that and enjoy the campiness of that. Good. It's a good movie, man. I swear to God.
This has been really fun. If hopefully people don't hate our fan casts, and if you have different ideas, please send them to us.
Yeah,
we'd love to hear your fan casts. Do you have any? We're belaboring this, but that's because we love the mutants. What would your the mutants like elevator pitch plot be for the movie?
Okay, the mutants elevator plot would be Jubilee. She's left home because of her powers. She meets a gang of kids who hang out at the mall, and they all sort of realize that they have these weird powers, maybe because they got in trouble because of an accident at the mall or something. Probably there's an arcade or some kind of cool RoboCop 2 style hideout. And it would be about them learning to have their powers, to work with their powers as this rise of anti-powered people, anti-mutant oppression was kind of coming. And then you'd have your final stinger would be like a Harry Potter style letter asking you to be part of the school, or a Charles Xavier stinger or something. But I'd focus on the kids and this notion of this ragtag underground found family. What would yours be?
I'd do something actually quite similar. I think I'd do like Mutant Massacre without the massacre. So it'd be like Morlocks, you know, these teens that have been...
I think Morlocks is really likely.
Yeah.
Because also they already live hidden from everyone else.
So they're on the run. They're living like that, living hidden, and maybe the way it all kind of comes to the fore is Charles, just for the good of mutants as a species, has been doing this mind wipe thing and suppressing people's ability to understand that they're mutants, etc. But like he there's a discrepancy somehow.
Yeah, maybe there's a kid who has a power that contradicts it.
Something.
Or something.
And they have a memory that they shouldn't have, and this unravels the whole mystery that leads us down to the tunnels, damage control, or the Sentinel program, or somebody goes down there to basically root out what they think are this community of outlaw-powered people, but is really just like, kids and outcasts living on the margins of society, and that blows the lid off of this entire secret society that's been living underground.
Oh, I love that. That sounds great. Marvel, come to us. We'll
come
help
to
you.
us, baby.
I know you're just announcing the mutants because people want X-Men stuff. I don't believe there's a pitch. We're ready.